Do you always try to make others happy even when it hurts you? Welcome to EGO PEDIA. Today, we explore what happens when pleasing others makes you lose yourself. Why do we sacrifice our needs just to feel accepted? And how can we stop before we forget who we really are? Let's dive in.
When pleasing others makes you lose yourself. A psychological exploration of approval, identity, and emotional exhaustion. Absolutely. Here's an expanded and more detailed explanation for the point, the hidden cost of being liked, from the EGO PEDIA journal article, When Pleasing Others Makes You Lose Yourself. The hidden cost of being liked. On the surface, being liked seems like an innocent, even admirable goal. After all, who doesn't want to be appreciated, accepted, and welcomed in social spaces? From early childhood, we're taught the value of politeness, helpfulness, and agreeability. The desire to be liked is, at its core, deeply human. It feeds our sense of belonging and safety. But this natural instinct can quietly morph into a dangerous emotional trade-off, exchanging authenticity for approval. Approval as emotional currency. When being liked becomes a priority above all else, it turns into a form of emotional currency. People begin to treat their identity, time, and energy like bargaining chips. You may not say it aloud, but inside, the deal sounds like this. If I say yes, they'll think I'm a good person. If I agree with them, they won't reject me. If I don't cause any waves, I'll stay safe and accepted. It becomes a subtle transaction. Give people what they want, your time, silence, energy, compliance, and in return, get their affection or approval. The problem is, these transactions are often unsustainable and emotionally expensive. Self-silencing and emotional debt. The more someone chases external validation, the more they silence their internal voice. Over time, this self-silencing accumulates into what we can call emotional debt, the internal backlog of unspoken feelings, unmet needs, and suppressed desires. This debt doesn't vanish. It shows up as anxiety before social interactions, guilt when taking time for yourself, anger that feels disproportionate or misplaced, a persistent feeling of being used or invisible. You smile while your needs go unmet. You help while your own to-do list grows. You listen endlessly but rarely feel heard. The cost of being liked, in this sense, becomes living in quiet emotional deficit, constantly giving without receiving enough in return. The invisible mask. To be liked, many people unconsciously create a mask, a version of themselves that is agreeable, pleasant, and rarely disagrees. This mask becomes so practiced, so rehearsed, that others begin to expect it, and the real self becomes hidden even from you. The danger is that you're not just hiding your opinions. You're hiding your boundaries, your truth, your fatigue, your preferences. Eventually, this mask starts to feel like a prison. You're loved, but not for who you really are. You're praised, but not truly seen. The more you're liked for the mask, the more terrified you become of taking it off. Conditional self-worth. One of the most damaging effects of compulsive people-pleasing is the development of conditional self-worth. That is, the belief that your value is directly tied to how much others like you or how much you do for them. You might find yourself thinking, if they're happy, then I'm good. If they're upset, then I've failed. If someone's disappointed in me, I must be a bad person. This distorted self-image is exhausting to maintain, and it's built on a shaky foundation. Because public approval is fragile. People's opinions shift. Expectations change. And no amount of pleasing can guarantee permanent acceptance. When your worth depends on others' perceptions, you give them the power to define you and take pieces of you in the process. The real cost, losing your inner compass. The ultimate price of being liked at all costs is the erosion of your inner compass, your sense of self, your values, your needs. Instead of asking, what do I think? Or what do I want? The dominant questions become, what will they think? What do they want from me? How can I keep the peace, even if I feel conflicted? Bit by bit, your own voice gets drowned out. You stop trusting your gut. You stop advocating for yourself. And eventually, you may feel lost, not because you lack direction, but because you've spent so long steering your life to match someone else's map. Conclusion: you can't be fully loved if you're half present. The truth is, the love we gain through pleasing is often shallow, conditional, and dependent on continued performance. But the love we gain through authenticity, even if fewer in number, is real, stable, and deeply fulfilling. When you prioritize being liked over being real, you lose yourself in the process. But when you allow yourself to be seen as you are, needs, boundaries, imperfections, and all, you open the door to something far more powerful than approval: connection without self-abandonment. 1. The psychology behind people-pleasing. Understanding why yes becomes an automatic response, even at our own expense. People-pleasing is often misunderstood as simply being nice or considerate. But beneath the surface, it's a deeply rooted behavioral pattern shaped by psychological survival mechanisms, emotional wounds, and social conditioning. It is rarely just about making others happy. It's often about avoiding pain. Let's unpack the psychological layers that shape this all-too-common behavior. A coping mechanism born from early relationships. Many people-pleasers trace their habits back to childhood environments where emotional approval was conditional. In families where love was only given when a child was obedient, calm, or helpful, the child learns that compliance equals connection. For example, if a child is praised only when being helpful but ignored when expressing needs, they learn to prioritize others over themselves. If expressing anger or sadness is punished or dismissed, they internalize that conflict is dangerous and suppress self-expression to avoid rejection. This early training wires the brain to associate agreeableness with safety and assertiveness with danger, even into adulthood. B. Hypervigilance to others' emotions. People-pleasers often develop a heightened sensitivity to the moods and needs of those around them. Psychologically, this is known as hypervigilance, a survival response that scans the environment for emotional threats. In practice, this means you notice when someone seems upset, even if they say they're fine. You try to fix or smooth over conflict before it escalates. You feel responsible for keeping the emotional peace in a group. This trait can make people-pleasers excellent caretakers or empaths, but it also makes them more likely to neglect their own feelings, since their attention is always turned outward. C. Fear of abandonment or rejection. Another strong psychological driver is the fear of abandonment. For someone with this fear, saying no or expressing a differing opinion feels risky because it might disappoint others, create distance in the relationship, lead to withdrawal of affection or inclusion. To prevent this, they often over-accommodate, saying yes even when overwhelmed or hiding discomfort to maintain harmony. In short, they'd rather be overwhelmed than be alone. D. Identity tied to usefulness. Many people-pleasers develop a self-worth system based on utility. They believe their value comes from how helpful, available, or agreeable they are to others. This results in overcommitting to projects, relationships, or favors, guilt when resting or setting boundaries, feeling aimless or unworthy when not needed. Over time, their identity becomes enmeshed with being the reliable one or the peacekeeper. Saying no feels like a betrayal, not just of others, but of the version of themselves they've come to depend on. E. Cultural and gender expectations. Cultural upbringing also plays a significant role in reinforcing people-pleasing. In many societies, women are taught to be nurturing, polite, and self-sacrificing. Men may be encouraged to suppress their own emotional needs for the sake of strength or teamwork. Children are expected to obey without question, not assert opinions or say no to elders. These expectations teach individuals that being likable is more important than being honest, and that social approval is more valuable than personal truth. F. Conflict avoidance and anxiety management. Some people-pleasers are driven by conflict avoidance. The thought of upsetting someone causes disproportionate anxiety, so they appease to prevent potential confrontation, even when no actual threat exists. This behavior often links to past trauma involving conflict or emotional volatility, a nervous system conditioned to fawn, submit, rather than fight or flee, a low confidence in one's ability to handle confrontation, For these individuals, people-pleasing becomes a way to manage anxiety, not just social situations. G. Reward feedback loop. Here's what keeps the cycle going. It works, at least temporarily. People-pleasers are often praised for being so helpful, so nice, or so reliable. These compliments act as dopamine hits, reinforcing the pattern neurologically. However, this feedback loop masks the internal cost: chronic exhaustion, resentment, a loss of identity, emotional burnout. The approval feels good, but it doesn't fill the void of not being able to live truthfully. A survival strategy in disguise. People-pleasing is rarely about generosity alone. It's a survival strategy, often rooted in emotional neglect, fear, and distorted self-worth. It's the psyche's way of saying, if I meet everyone else's needs, maybe I'll finally feel safe, loved, and enough. Understanding this behavior compassionately is the first step. From there, the work is learning to shift from external validation to internal alignment, where your self-worth isn't negotiated through performance, but grounded in your authentic self. 2. The gradual loss of self. When being everything for everyone leaves you with nothing for yourself. The tragedy of chronic people-pleasing isn't just exhaustion or burnout, it's the quiet erosion of identity. Over time, saying yes too often and suppressing your true desires chips away at your sense of self. You become a mirror reflecting others' needs, expectations, and feelings, but forget what you look like without them. Let's explore how this gradual loss of self unfolds and why it's so psychologically damaging. A. Living through others' expectations. At the beginning, it might feel good to be helpful, accommodating, or reliable. But when this becomes a default response, not a conscious choice, it starts to reshape your identity around what others expect from you. You begin to dress, speak, or behave to avoid judgment. Choose careers or relationships based on others' approval. Censor your opinions to fit in. Confuse what you want with what others want from you. Without realizing it, your life becomes a collage of others' preferences, not a canvas painted with your own vision. B. Emotional numbness and internal conflict. As your external behavior drifts further from your internal truth, a gap forms, a psychological distance between who you are and how you act. This often leads to emotional numbness or disconnection, confusion about your own desires or goals, feeling like you're performing all the time, chronic inner tension or guilt when trying to assert yourself. The more you suppress, the less you feel. Over time, you stop asking yourself what you truly want because you've learned to dismiss the answer. C. Difficulty making independent decisions. When you've trained yourself to always consider others' needs first, making decisions for your own good can feel foreign, even frightening. People in this phase often second-guess themselves constantly, seek excessive reassurance from others, avoid opportunities that require independent thought or risk, feel overwhelmed by simple choices because they're not used to being asked, "What do you want?" The inner voice that once guided you has been drowned out by years of external noise. D. Relationships become unbalanced. People-pleasers often attract relationships where their role is to give, support, or fix. These dynamics may initially seem like affection, but they often evolve into emotional dependency, imbalance, or even manipulation. Signs of this include feeling resentful but unable to speak up, being treated like a doormat or default caretaker, struggling to set healthy boundaries without guilt, realizing people only call when they need something. The self you lose in these relationships isn't just about opinions or choices. It's your sense of value beyond what you provide to others. E. Suppressed dreams and passions. When you live to please others, your dreams often take a back seat or disappear entirely. Many people-pleasers abandon creative pursuits or hobbies they once loved, stay in careers they don't enjoy because it pleases family or avoids conflict, ignore inner nudges for change because they fear being selfish or irresponsible. Over time, the loss isn't just psychological. It becomes existential. You wake up wondering, how did I get here? Whose life am I living? F. Burnout and identity crisis. Eventually, The pressure to keep everyone else happy while neglecting yourself reaches a tipping point. This may look like sudden emotional breakdowns, midlife crises, or abrupt life changes. Feeling lost, directionless, or invisible, even to yourself. Depression, anxiety, or chronic fatigue with no medical explanation. This isn't weakness. It's your soul trying to be heard again. Reclaiming the self isn't easy, but it's possible. The good news? The self you feel disconnected from is not lost forever. It's buried, not broken. Reclaiming it begins with small but radical acts. Saying no, without apology. Exploring hobbies or dreams you've shelved. Journaling your authentic thoughts. Making space for silence so your own voice can reemerge. Most importantly, it means learning that you are not responsible for everyone's happiness and that you deserve to exist for your own sake, not just others. Conclusion: self-loss isn't sudden, but it's real. People-pleasing doesn't strip away identity in one dramatic act. It erodes it gradually, through 1,000 small self-betrayals that feel polite, kind, or necessary. But behind every "it's fine" when it's not, or every "whatever you want" when you have a preference, is a whisper of your true self, hoping you'll listen. You don't owe the world a version of you that disappears so others can feel comfortable. You owe yourself the chance to exist fully, without apology. 3. The emotional burnout of being nice. Why constant niceness drains you, and what it really costs. Being nice is often seen as a virtue. It earns praise, avoids conflict, and smooths social interactions. But when being nice becomes a chronic performance rather than a genuine expression, it turns into an emotional burden, a slow leak in your energy, identity, and well-being. What many people don't realize is that compulsive niceness is not the same as kindness. It's often driven by fear, anxiety, and emotional overcompensation. And over time, this facade, however polite, can lead to profound emotional burnout. Let's unpack why. A. Chronic suppression of authentic emotions. Nice people often feel that expressing their true feelings, especially negative ones like anger, frustration, or disappointment, is rude or unacceptable. So they suppress them. This means smiling when you're hurting, agreeing when you want to object, soothing others while silently screaming inside. This emotional repression builds up like pressure in a sealed container. And sooner or later, it bursts through tears, breakdowns, or a sudden loss of control over small things. The body may also respond with chronic stress symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or insomnia. B. Niceness as a form of self-erasure. Being nice at all costs can make you invisible in your own life. You become the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who makes things easier for others, but never easier for yourself. Over time, this creates a gnawing sense of, no one really knows me. I'm always there for others, but who's there for me? I say yes automatically, but I don't feel good about it. This identity void leads to emotional exhaustion, not because you're weak, but because you've neglected your own emotional fuel for too long. C. Resentment builds in the background. One of the hidden dangers of overniceness is resentment. When you give too much, say yes too often, or carry others' emotional weight without reciprocity, bitterness begins to brew beneath the surface. Signs of quiet resentment include passive-aggressive behavior, silent guilt-tripping, emotional shutdown in close relationships, sudden outbursts over minor issues. Resentment is often a natural reaction to self-neglect. But instead of recognizing this, many nice people feel guilty for even feeling it, which adds another layer of stress and internal conflict. D. Emotional burnout mimics depression and anxiety. When you're constantly suppressing your needs and emotions to be seen as nice, you're operating in a high-alert emotional state. Over time, this triggers symptoms that closely resemble clinical depression or anxiety, such as feeling emotionally numb or hollow, a losing interest in things you used to enjoy, constantly feeling tired or overwhelmed, being overly sensitive to rejection or criticism, dreading social interactions that require more emotional giving. These are not flaws. They're warning signs your psyche and nervous system are depleted. E. The nice trap in work and relationships. In the workplace, the nice one is often overburdened with extra tasks because they're less likely to say no. In relationships, they might become the emotional caretaker or the one who always adjusts. While this may seem admirable, it creates dangerous imbalances where you're taken for granted. Your needs are deprioritized. Assertiveness is mistaken for selfishness when you finally try to speak up. The irony is that being too nice often leads to less respect, not more, which can be deeply demoralizing. F. The guilt loop. When nice people do try to assert themselves, guilt often crashes in. Was I too harsh? Did I let them down? Maybe I should have just said yes. This guilt keeps them trapped in a cycle of overgiving, even when they're depleted. It's a loop that fuels emotional burnout, not emotional connection. G. True kindness versus compulsive niceness. There's a critical difference between authentic kindness and chronic niceness. Kindness comes from a place of fullness and choice. Chronic niceness comes from fear and the need to maintain approval. True kindness includes healthy boundaries, honest communication, and the ability to say no with love. Niceness that costs your mental health is not a virtue, it's a warning signal. Conclusion. Niceness is not always noble. The emotional burnout of being nice doesn't happen overnight. It accumulates slowly, through every silenced opinion, every swallowed need, every forced smile, until one day, you feel like a ghost of yourself, existing only for others' comfort. Being nice isn't wrong, but being inauthentically nice at the expense of your own soul is a silent form of self-abandonment. If you're feeling this exhaustion, the solution isn't to become unkind, it's to become real. Because you can be honest and kind, firm and compassionate, boundaried and loving. You don't have to choose between being true and being good. You can be both. 4. The invisible contracts we make. How unspoken expectations trap us in roles we never agreed to. Many people who fall into the trap of people-pleasing or chronic niceness are bound not by official agreements, but by invisible contracts, unspoken psychological deals they believe they must uphold in order to be accepted, loved, or safe. These contracts aren't written, negotiated, or consciously agreed upon. They're implied, internalized, and enforced silently by ourselves. Let's explore how these hidden agreements are formed, what they cost us, and how to break free. A. What are invisible contracts? An invisible contract is an unconscious belief like, if I never cause trouble, people will like me. If I always help others, they'll eventually help me. If I suppress my needs, I'll be seen as strong and reliable. If I make everyone else comfortable, I'll earn love and approval. These beliefs become guiding rules for behavior, especially in relationships. But because they are unspoken, they are not mutual. The other person isn't necessarily aware of the terms, and thus, they never feel obligated to reciprocate. The result? One-sided emotional labor. B. The origins of these contracts. Invisible contracts are often rooted in early experiences. They develop from childhood environments where love was conditional, households where emotional expression was discouraged, trauma responses like fawning, appeasing others to avoid danger, cultural or religious norms that glorify self-sacrifice. For example, a child who only receives attention when being good might internalize, to be loved, I must always be agreeable. This becomes a blueprint for adult behavior, especially in romantic, familial, or work relationships. C. They're built on hope, fear, and miscommunication. These contracts are rarely selfish. They're often built on hope. If I give enough, I'll be seen. If I'm kind enough, I'll be valued. But they're also driven by fear. If I say no, I'll be abandoned. If I disagree, I'll be rejected. And because they're not spoken aloud, they create layers of miscommunication. You expect appreciation or reciprocity. The other person assumes you're okay with the dynamic. Resentment builds, but the cause is invisible to everyone but you. This is why so many people feel unseen while constantly being there for others. D. These contracts often create emotional imbalance. Invisible contracts distort relationship dynamics. You might always be the listener, never the one who's heard. Give help without ever asking for it. Be the peacemaker, even when you're the one hurting. And yet, you wonder why others don't notice your exhaustion. The truth is, they've never been told the real cost of your kindness.
Why?
Because the contract you follow is never explicitly shared. It lives only in your head. Breaking the contract feels like breaking the relationship. One of the hardest things about recognizing these contracts is that breaking them feels like betrayal. Saying no for the first time can feel terrifying. Setting a boundary can be misread as hostility. Expressing your needs might trigger guilt or shame. But in reality, breaking an invisible contract is not an act of aggression. It's an act of emotional honesty, a shift from silent sacrifice to mutual understanding. If a relationship depends on you never expressing your needs, then it's not a healthy relationship. It's an unspoken performance. How to rewrite the terms. The good news? These contracts are not fixed. You can begin to renegotiate your emotional agreements with others and with yourself. Start by noticing when you're acting out of fear or duty, not choice. Asking yourself, what unspoken rule am I following right now? Practicing honest communication about your needs and limits. Accepting that not everyone will respond well, and that's okay. It takes courage to rewrite your role, but it also gives others the chance to meet the real you, not the version they've become accustomed to because you never said otherwise. Conclusion: from silent obligation to conscious choice. Invisible contracts are powerful because they're quiet. They keep you stuck in roles you didn't consciously choose, all in the name of peace, likability, or belonging. But silence doesn't equal consent. Overgiving doesn't guarantee love. And playing small doesn't make you more worthy. You have the right to make your expectations visible, your needs known, and your boundaries honored. When you do, relationships may shift, but so will your sense of self. Because true connection begins when you stop pretending and start showing up as you are. 5. How society rewards self-abandonment. The unseen incentives behind putting yourself last. In many cultures, there's a subtle but powerful social script that glorifies self-sacrifice and self-abandonment, especially in contexts like family, work, and community. From an early age, people are often taught that to be good, responsible, or successful, they must put others' needs before their own. This societal messaging creates an environment where self-abandonment is not only normalized but rewarded, making it incredibly challenging to prioritize personal well-being without guilt or backlash. Let's break down how society often reinforces these patterns. A. The cultural heroism of sacrifice. Many traditions celebrate the figure who sacrifices their own comfort or happiness for the sake of others. The selfless parent who works multiple jobs and ignores their own needs. The dedicated employee who stays late and skips breaks to support the team. The caregiver who puts family above everything, often at great personal cost. Such roles are idealized as noble, virtuous, and morally superior. This reinforces the idea that personal boundaries are less important than fulfilling social roles or expectations. B. Social validation through approval and praise. When someone consistently puts others first, they often receive compliments for their kindness and generosity, a gratitude and dependence from friends, family, or colleagues. Social status as the dependable one, or the glue holding things together. These forms of social validation can be powerful motivators that encourage continued self-abandonment. The approval becomes addictive, making it harder to step back without fearing loss of esteem or connection. C. Gendered expectations. Self-abandonment is especially reinforced through gender norms. For example, women are often socialized to be caregivers, nurturers, and emotional laborers, with immense pressure to be nice and accommodating. Men may face different pressures, but still encounter societal messages about putting family or work above personal health or feelings. These expectations limit authentic self-expression and encourage the sacrifice of personal needs to fit cultural ideals. D. Economic and workplace incentives. Modern workplaces often reward overwork and availability, glorifying those who skip vacations, answer emails late at night, volunteer for extra tasks without extra pay or recognition. This creates a culture where burnout is a badge of honor and self-care is seen as weakness or lack of commitment. The financial system, too, may reward continuous productivity over balance, making self-abandonment not just socially, but economically advantageous in the short term. The social cost of saying no. Despite the rewards for self-abandonment, those who set firm boundaries or prioritize self-care often face criticism for being selfish or lazy, social exclusion or gossip, feeling misunderstood or pressured to explain themselves. This creates a double bind. Abandon yourself and be rewarded, but risk exhaustion and resentment. Protect yourself and risk judgment and isolation. This social pressure keeps many trapped in unhealthy patterns, afraid to break free. The hidden long-term consequences. While society may reward self-abandonment in the short term, the long-term costs are rarely acknowledged. Physical and mental health decline. Breakdown of relationships due to unspoken resentment. A loss of personal identity and autonomy. Ironically, these consequences often reduce an individual's ability to contribute meaningfully, yet the cultural script rarely shifts to value sustainable self-care over relentless sacrifice. Challenging the reward system. Understanding how society rewards self-abandonment is the first step in breaking the cycle. It requires recognizing that social approval doesn't equal personal well-being, valuing authentic boundaries as acts of courage, not selfishness, creating cultural narratives that honor balance, self-care, and mutual respect. By changing what we reward, individually and collectively, we can foster environments where being true to yourself is celebrated as the highest form of respect for yourself and others. 6. Reclaiming yourself, the path back. How to rediscover your identity and restore balance after self-abandonment. Reclaiming yourself after years of people-pleasing, overniceness, or chronic self-sacrifice is a deeply personal and often challenging journey. It's about more than just setting boundaries. It's about rediscovering who you are beneath the layers of external expectations and invisible contracts. This path back to yourself requires courage, patience, and self-compassion. Here's a closer look at how you can begin to reclaim your identity and restore your emotional and mental balance. Awareness. Recognizing the patterns. The first crucial step is awareness, coming to recognize when and how you've been putting others before yourself at your own expense. Ask yourself, when do I feel drained or resentful? Which situations or relationships consistently make me lose myself? What unspoken rules am I following that don't serve me? Awareness shines a light on automatic behaviors and unconscious beliefs, giving you the power to question and change them. Reconnecting with your needs and desires. Self-abandonment often means losing touch with your authentic needs and desires. Reclaiming yourself means tuning into what you truly want, beyond what others expect. Valuing your feelings as legitimate signals, not inconveniences. Prioritizing your mental, emotional, and physical well-being as non-negotiable. This can include small daily practices, like journaling about your feelings, reflecting on what activities bring you joy, or simply asking yourself, what do I need right now? Learning to say no with compassion. Setting boundaries is a powerful act of reclaiming your time and energy. Saying no can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to always saying yes. But it's essential. Key strategies include practicing assertive but kind refusals, understanding that no is a complete sentence, no need to over-explain, recognizing that your limits are a form of self-respect, not selfishness. Boundaries create space for healthier relationships and self-care. Healing from guilt and people-pleasing. Guilt often accompanies reclaiming your needs. It's important to identify the sources of guilt. Are they internal or imposed by others? Challenge irrational beliefs that say you must always please to be worthy. Seek support from trusted friends, mentors, or therapists who validate your right to self-care. Healing guilt allows you to step fully into your autonomy. E. Rebuilding your identity outside of roles. Often, self-abandonment happens because identity gets entangled in roles. The nice one, the caretaker, the peacemaker. Reclaiming yourself means exploring interests, values, and passions beyond these roles. Trying new experiences that express your authentic self. Creating a self-concept grounded in your own values, not others' expectations. This process can be both exciting and frightening, but it's crucial for genuine self-expression. F. Cultivating supportive relationships. Reclaiming yourself doesn't mean isolating. Instead, it means cultivating relationships that respect your boundaries, encourage your growth, allow vulnerability without judgment, celebrate your authenticity. Supportive environments reinforce your reclaimed identity and help sustain balance. G. Embracing self-compassion as a lifelong practice. Finally, the journey back to yourself is ongoing. Self-compassion is the foundation. Being patient with setbacks and slip-ups. Speaking to yourself kindly, as you would to a friend. Celebrating progress, however small. Self-compassion nurtures resilience and fosters a sustainable relationship with yourself. Conclusion. The courage to be you. Reclaiming yourself after chronic self-abandonment is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of growth and renewal. It is a courageous commitment to living authentically, honoring your needs, and stepping into your full humanity. By choosing this path, you invite deeper connection with yourself and others and create space for a life defined not by sacrifice, but by balance, integrity, and genuine joy. 7. A new definition of kindness. Kindness isn't about saying yes to everything. It's about saying yes when you mean it and no when you need to. Being a good person doesn't require you to shrink, bend, or disappear. Real goodness includes honesty, limits, and self-respect. Conclusion. From pleaser to person. It's okay to want connection, appreciation, and love, but not at the cost of your identity. Because the more you betray yourself to be liked, the less there is of you left to love. And here's the truth EGO PEDIA wants you to remember. You don't have to lose yourself to be loved. The right people won't ask you to.